Welcome to Friday, everybody. Have my morning coffee. I've been thinking about something. I've been thinking about risk tolerance, which we all have to figure out what it is for each of us. I came from a childhood that taught me pretty much infinite fear and shame, and there wasn't any tolerance for risk. The construct I was raised with was one very much of towing the line, following the prescribed path. You have to have this, you have to have that, you have to have this in place, that in place, or you're in a lot of trouble. And very risk averse. Very, very risk averse. So, naturally, one grows up very fearful of fucking up. One grows up very fearful of not achieving one of those prescribed mileposts. Getting a degree, having a successful career, getting married, raising a family, on and on and on. The classic, pretty much religious American path to perceived success, at least in my experience. And when you're raised that way, you become a very insecure person. That's insane. All this striving for the trappings of stability or the perception of stability, it makes you really insecure. It makes you terrified of anything going awry, which things always will. We have no control over 90% of what happens to us. And it's just nuts. It turns you into this subordinate personality that's afraid to take any risks for fear of disappointing family, whatever, the construct, this is how you succeed. Do something different. And something bad could happen. Holy shit, something bad could happen. Oh, but if you're right with God and if you do everything by the numbers, then good things will happen. Now, I know plenty of Christians who know that's not the case, but that was very much the construct I was raised in. If things were going wrong in your life, it meant you weren't right with God. Sorry, but that's how I was raised. And I was in a pretty radical Pentecostal church. It was damn near a cult for several years of my childhood. So that's where we were. So I'm not saying blanket across the board that every Judeo-based or Christian religion, this is how it is. That was just my experience. I respect all the religions out there. I don't prescribe to any of them, but that's totally an individual thing, and I got no problem with it. So there's that little disclaimer. I'm talking about my personal experience, okay? So, for me, being raised that way, as I'm approaching, getting through my 20s and I'm not married and et cetera, I start panicking. And we hear about this, people's, women's biological clock. I don't know if that's true or not. But our whole culture, really, I think that's beginning to change. I'm grateful for it. But when I was in my 20s, the whole culture was, well, you better not hit 30 and you're not married, There's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you. And it was just a weight on me that I didn't even realize. But what started to happen for me, over time is, even though I was taking certain risks, a lot of them were stupid risks, like with credit cards and buying gear to build up my business, my capabilities as a photographer. I was taking idiotic risks that the whole point of them was to elevate me to some position, or my business up to some position that is where I thought it should be for the age I was at and where I was at, And also, it was an addiction for me too, It helped, in my mind, fill a hole inside. If I had every piece of gear imaginable that I could do, like world-class work in my little tiny market of Chelan County, Washington, where I was mostly shooting for agriculture and some industrial stuff, and I didn't need to be able to do everything that could possibly be done in special effect photography and everything in the cities. But it was a pride thing, and it was something that made me feel valuable. So I had developed stupid risk tolerance. I was being very unwise in terms of taking the risk of borrowing all this money on credit just to buy gear that I was deluding myself that this is going to make my business grow and it's going to make me successful. Again, all rooted in a place of insecurity to begin with. So I literally had dysfunctional risk tolerance is the best way I can put it, And over time, post marriage and post everything that happened to me, 10 years ago now is when it started to fall apart for real, even though it started long before that. But once I started doing the personal work to figure out where all these, destructive behaviors were coming from, why I couldn't connect with my true self, and why I had so much shame, why I was so fearful. As I emerged from that work after years of working on it, that's when all of a sudden I became capable of being vulnerable, of letting my vulnerability show and letting go of all those trappings of perceived security and what I have to be successful. All that started to just fall off of me as I did this work. And the amazing thing is, and of course, again, everybody has a different definition of success. So if you want to define success by financial resources, then I am anything but a success at this point in my life. If you want to define success like I do by how full my heart feels with what I'm doing, the state of my soul, my spirit, and the absolute knowledge to the core that I'm right with what I'm doing with my life, that's how I gauge success. And it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. But the interesting thing is it took a lot of what I'll call positive risk tolerance to get here. I had to disappoint a lot of people. I had to make financially, for me, pretty unsound decisions and move a lot on faith. My risk tolerance went through the roof, possibly even too much, but I think it's gotten so high simply because I know what matters to me in this life, and anything less than that, it's not worth, what someone else thinks about it. It's not worth me not taking a risk that I know I should take. I mean, I'm just so solidly in touch with my core, my spirit, that I trust this path implicitly. And I mean, I had a lot of mechanical breakdowns last summer. Definitely shook my faith. It shook my confidence in this truck. And I've worked through all that, but it's months of it. So it kind of reminded me when I was thinking about this video today, how when things shake you up, it also tends to woohoo. That behavior I was going to do, now I'm not so sure. And that's human nature. But when you're in a positive place in your heart and your spirit, when you're moving in a direction that is constructive and healthy for you and the people around you, you're going to build risk tolerance. It's different for everybody. What I can tolerate risking and what you can tolerate risking, totally different. I'm just wanting to encourage you to get to a positive place at your core. Do the personal work you have to do to make sure that you're not making decisions in your life based on irrational fear. If you're a fearful person like I used to be, that's going to color all your decisions, and you're going to potentially experience a lot of regret down the road. Even with all that happened in my life, that, I wish things had been different, I don't regret any of it. There was a lot of love. I have a beautiful family. I wouldn't change anything. in the background because it's all brought me to where I am now. And I'm so grateful for where I am now. But where I am now took a lot of faith and a lot of risk tolerance. And people ask me all the time, how can you do this? How can you not know where you're going to be, how you're going to live, 10 years down the road, where you're going to live? How can you not know all these things that everybody seems to think they know? And that's the thing. You hope you know, you think you know, and most people cling to this structure that feels solid to them. And the reality is, everything you have, everything, all the money, all the real estate, all the possessions in the world, that can all be gone. That can all change in a heartbeat, because literally, something could happen to you tomorrow. And all of that you're planning to enjoy and live and finally get there in 10 years, 20 years, whatever, could be gone, or certainly not with you, because you wore yourself to death. You weren't living in a healthy place. You're unwilling to take a risk to do what's in your heart to do. And to me, that's a sad story. So I'm just encouraging you to do your work, know in your heart what really matters to you, do what really matters to you, and be willing to take a risk for it. There you go. Have a great weekend.